535. So now we're dividing. So we go to our rules for dividing. And you multiply by the reciprocal. Now what does it mean in the bottom there where they have the 7n in brackets and then it's squared? That means you would have 7 times 7 is 49, and n times n would be n squared. So as far as simplifying this, if I look at my variables, and I look at n cubed on top and n squared on the bottom, once that's simplified, how many n's will I be left with? 1n, and where will it be? On the top of my fraction or on the bottom? It'll be on the top, so I can figure that out. Probably here that 49 looks like a big number. I would simplify my 7 over 49, because they both divide by 7 will be 1/7. Probably also simplify my 12 over 4. 12 divided by 4, 3 and 1. So now when I look at my numbers that are left, on the top I have 1 times 3. On the bottom I have 1 times 7. So it's going to be 3 on the top, 7 on the bottom. One of the last things I look at is all my negative signs. How many negatives are in this whole thing? Just the 1. So in the end, it's going to be negative. And now it doesn't matter where you put that negative, because negative 3n over 7 is the same thing as 3n over negative 7, and it's the same as having the negative out in front, negative 3n over 7. Because a negative sign really is like a negative 1. So if I took negative 1 and times it by 3n over 7, how do I multiply fractions? Well, I could just have that negative out in front. That's sort of the last one that I showed here. Right? So I could just say that negative's out in front. I wouldn't have to write the 1, but I just have negative 3n over 7. But if I wanted to change negative 1 into a fraction, I could write negative 1 as negative 1 over 1. And if I multiplied that by 3n over 7, negative 1 times 3n would be negative 3n all over positive 7. Or I could write my negative 1 as 1 over negative 1. And then if I multiplied that by 3n over 7, I would get 3n over negative 7. So all three of those mean the same thing. There's not a preference. Although generally, they would all be marked as correct. Generally, for whatever reason, you'll very rarely see a negative left on the bottom of a fraction. It's just not seen as nice looking. I'm not sure. For part B here, anytime you see dividing, take the time, the first step, to rewrite it as multiplying by the reciprocal. Again, maybe you want to take the time first, before we simplify the numbers, to get rid of the things that are exactly the same. Can you see that there's an x minus 3 and an x minus 3? That there's an x and an x. So if I simplify those first, what am I left with? 5 times 3 times x plus 5 over 2 times 10. That's all that's left. Maybe you want to make this 15 over 20 and simplify it from there. Maybe you see that the 5 over 10 simplifies to 1 and 2. 1 times 3 then is just 3, x plus 5, and 2 times 2 is 4. You don't need to distribute the 3. In fact, we like to leave things factored because it shows us easier to see that we've simplified it completely. And if you can do it all in one step with the numbers as well, okay, usually you'd probably have to take the step to write it as multiplying, right? But after you've written it as multiplying, if you can do that all in one step, great. So the questions you can do for question 2 are 4, 5b, 6c and d, and 11b.